So I landed in the land of exploration of feminine energy out of sheer desperation, if I'm honest. And I found myself at age 52, I'm 57 now, divorced twice, had gotten out of a relationship that was not a marriage, that just took me to my knees. And after that relationship, like it was heart-wrenching in so many ways. And after that relationship, I really had to look at myself and say, okay, you're 52, you've been divorced twice. You just got out of a relationship that was so hard on you. Could it be potentially something about me? You know what I mean? Is there
Mm.
something that I don't really understand very well about relationships? That's what brought me into the world of exploring feminine energetics. That was in 2018. Funnily enough, in 2006, a dear mentor had suggested that I read the book by David Deida called Intimate Communion. And I picked that book up over that whatever 10-year time span. I picked it up 5 different times, and I would read a little and I would put it down and think, this is BS. Like this is, but I wouldn't get rid of the book, which I think is fascinating. Like I really hated it, and I never got rid of it. So then after that relationship ended, or after I like literally pulled myself away from it, which is what I had to do. It was one of those where I just had to extract myself out of it, even though on some level I didn't want to. I knew I had to maintain my own sanity. I read that book, and I think I read it cover to cover the night the penny dropped. And that just took me on a journey. I met Jillian somewhere in there, I think when I was in the throes of that relationship and just trying to sort things out. Yeah, and it just led me on a journey of like really seeing at a deeper level that what David Deida was trying to say, if when I took my old lens off of like, oh, this is all to benefit men, right? I didn't get what it would do for me. And when I started to really get what feeling into and embodying my feminine energy would do for me, like it was just mind-blowing to me, and just it was just such a different way to live.
Mm. Kimberly, what did you
Yeah.
notice shifting? Because you talk about first thinking, oh, these frameworks, this approach is so benefiting men, it's not giving nothing to me. But then that discovery of how embodying your femininity actually was serving you deeply, like in what ways did you start to see it benefiting you?
Oh my gosh, there were so many. I think the first thing I recall was just that I didn't need to be in control of everything. And there was a time in my life where it felt like I needed to be in control. Like that just was part of my job. And then when I started to realize like, oh wait, what if I don't need to be in control? There was just such a relief. Like I don't have to hold it together. I don't have to, like, just stress left my body when I could start to truly trust that. That was the first thing I remember. Because I remember the moment when my masculine energy actually really kicked in. And it's when I was married to my second husband. So this is a very long time ago. Way back in like 2000 or 2002. And I really had this desire at that time. I was about 30, I guess. Yeah, like kind of in my early 30s. I had this desire to have children and stay home with those children. Like that's what I really want to do, even though I was a career woman at the time. And I had this conversation with my now ex, and he ridiculed me for that desire. And
Oh.
now again, that's nothing against him. He was where he was at that point, and but I just remember feeling so ridiculed, like, he's like, be realistic. That's not how people do things these days. And and in that moment, I will tell you, like, I remember when the switch flipped, and it was then it's like, okay, well, if I'm not going to get what I want, then I'm going to go kick ass and take some names And I just got on a really strong career path, and I never looked back. I think it hurt so deeply. I felt so deeply that like something I desired I wasn't going to get, that I just was like, okay, I'm going to prove something. I need to prove something here. And I was on that path until, yeah, really 2016, 2017, 2018, like that. It took a long time to sort of open back up,
Mm,
and take the armor off my heart.
mm. I so resonate with that image of the armor around the heart. And it reminds me, Kimberly, of some experiences I've had with ex-partners of mine where I expressed desire to be supported in some way or taken care of or nourished in some way, which was very vulnerable for me to do because I also have this conditioning of like, you should be strong and independent and holding myself together. And so when I risked like to share these desires or this need for some kind of assistance or support, and then that was kind of shut down or ridiculed, oh my God, did I put on my armor? And it was like, okay, fuck you, dude. Like, I'll take care of myself. And it was like a fuck you that was coming from a place of pain. But it
Yes.
was also like, oh yeah, you're not going to take care of me? Well, I'm not going to accept any gifts from you. I'm not going to accept anything from you. I'm going to take care of myself. And it was
Yeah.
just like this place of deep pain.
Yes.
And what it may look like is like, she is strong, she's successful, she doesn't need a man. But what it felt like was like underneath all of that, my heart was just like, oh, in so much pain. But I didn't trust to even let a man see that because it was just too painful to risk really showing the impact of what that had when
Mm.
my man wasn't supportive of me.
Yeah, I relate to that so deeply. Like I can feel it when you're saying it. And I like that's the place that I also used to live in. And I think what's so fascinating is how fast we armor up, and how wide the effects of that go.
Mm-hmm.
Like we probably wouldn't do it if we really understood what we block out by doing that. But I didn't know. Like I just didn't know.
Mm.
But then when I was really literally brought to my knees of like, gosh, something has to change. I can't keep doing this. Somehow I had a glimmer of hope.
Mm. And what was that process like for you, Kimberly, of kind of de-armoring the heart?
Wow. I think for me it went, and this is going to sound a little bit cheesy, but it went back to this journey. What I really realized about myself was that in these situations I would get into with men, I wasn't loving myself first. And so I was going in automatically looking for love, looking for something that I wasn't giving myself. And
Mm.
so like, and we all, we know to some extent, right? That's never going to work. We can't get on the outside what we're not giving to ourselves. So that de-armoring had to do with, really allowing myself to feel very deeply the things that I was really afraid to feel. I thought they would destroy me, and they didn't, of course. The thinking about it is far worse typically than the actual, feeling it. And so really allowing myself to feel my own heart, to feel my own disappointment, to feel my own anger at times, but also to feel my own love for myself. And again, it sounds a bit cheesy, but like that really was the journey. And then for me, truly allowing the love of the divine in as well. Again, I thought I had to control everything. Thought I had to be in charge of everything. And although I had been really pretty religious, at times, I didn't actually have that embodied experience of the divine in my life on a consistent basis. And so that was another piece that really opened my heart wide open, and just like feeling and experiencing that provision of whatever I wanted or needed really was there if I was able to open myself enough for it. That was a real reorientation for me.
Hmm. Oh, I so hear you on that. And it resonates with some of the journey that I've been on as well, Kimberly, because I had an insight. It wasn't even that long ago, just in the past few months. And I've been on a pretty intentional spiritual path for many years now. But I realized that on some level below my conscious awareness, there was this belief that even if there was a God or some kind of greater force in the world, that God would not truly want good things for me.
Mm.
Almost like that God would tell me or promise to me, oh, we'll provide for you. You are loved, you are cared for. I want the best for you. But underneath that, actually not deliver on that.
Mm.
Like almost believing in a deceitful God or a manipulative
Mm.
God. And interestingly, because there are these parallels with like our relationship to men and our relationship to like the divine masculine. And in my family history, there's like a history on one side of the family of sociopathic, like masculine behavior. And I never lived in that. Like I never directly experienced that. But epigenetically, I feel like that got passed on. And it
Mm.
absolutely colored the relationship I have with money as well. Like this belief that I'm still working through around, oh, like money, like it's this very seductive, very charming, appealing character, but that will pull the rug out underneath you, or that is there to actually hurt you, you know?
Mm.
And so what you're saying about like reconnecting to that or healing that relationship with the divine, it's so essential, because how can we be in right relationship with mortal men, like imperfect mortal men who have all their trauma and all of their, lack of awareness around certain things, if we don't even have that anchoring in the kind of purified form of that energy?
Absolutely. There's just such a strong like parallel or correlation there. And that experience again, like I don't know about you, but I was so busy trying to take care of everything. Like I wouldn't have like if when the divine was trying to provide for me, I missed it entirely. Like I missed it. Like it didn't even show up on my radar screen because I was so busy taking care of everything because I had to, you know?
It's like someone's like coming by trying to hand you, I don't know, $200, and you're like, no, but I gotta like finish doing the dishes, or like I've got to finish this project, where like the divine is just trying to flow everything to you with ease and with joy
Yes.
and with love. And it's like having these, sometimes for me, I see it as like blinders on, or for me, it can show up as sort of a
Mhm. Mhm.
rigidity. Like this is the way
Yes.
it's meant to be, when in reality, like I need to be able to relax and open myself to really receive that.
Yes. I remember the first time or one of the first times that I had an actual experience of it that I noticed. And this is after that relationship ended, but before I met my now husband. And I had this inkling, this divine knowing that I was supposed to go to Big Bend National Park. It was a place that I'd always wanted to go to, but I got this direction that I was supposed to go out there. So I loaded my dog in the car and we went out there. I went out on my own, and I didn't really know what to do because the dog really can't go that many places, or she couldn't go that many places in the park. Like you can't just take dogs on most of the trails in national parks because it's not safe for them. So I was sitting with her at a coffee shop outdoors in Marathon, Texas, this tiny little Texas town one morning, and I may have had my map out to try to say, well, now what do I do? Like, I really can't take the dog in the park. We had just gotten there the night before. I didn't really feel comfortable leaving her at the Airbnb yet. And like literally a man comes out of the coffee shop and he says, hey, how many days are you here for? And I said, well, I'm just here for 2 days. And he goes, are you here with, you're going to take your dog? And I said, well, I'm not really sure because I can't really take her. And like literally the sentence didn't even come out of my mouth. And he said, here's what do you want my advice about what to do? And I said, yeah, like, yes. He's like, yeah, I've been here for a week. Here's what I would do. And he laid out what I could do on the first day that could include the dog, and then what I could do on the second day that wouldn't include the dog when she was more settled. And he said, that's what I would do. You're going to see the best of everything in the park. And I was like, and then he drove off. And I was like, what? Like I didn't have to figure that out. And it hit me in that moment. Like I can still feel myself sitting at the table. It was one of those moments. And I can feel where the dog was, because it was like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't have to do that. There was some divine plan in motion, and it caught my attention. That entire trip was like that. It was what I needed in the moment just would come. And it opened something again. It was a place where my heart opened even more. It's like, okay, wait, there's something bigger to this. Maybe I don't have to handle everything. Maybe there is, yeah, this masculine presence that's here to move things for us.
I love that. This idea of there being a masculine presence, because it's not specifically just a man, right? It's the masculine energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And in that moment, somehow I felt it differently in that moment. I can't even, there's probably no words actually to describe it. Yes. But that masculine presence. And so that really took me on a journey, that really took me on a journey of like, wow, if I didn't have to figure everything out, if I didn't have to handle everything, like who would I be then?
It's very humbling.
It's very humbling.
Like my ego is like, no, we're not going to do that.
Me too.
And it's interesting, Kimberly, I don't know about the circles that you run in, but certainly when I think of my friends growing up and even through college and early outside of college, a lot of my friends, my female friends, have been kind of like I was, this very strong, independent, ferocious, ambitious woman. And I feel like in these circles, it is encouraged and condoned, this idea of like, you go, girl, like you got this.
That strength, right? That strength. We're so strong,
Yeah. Yeah. And then on the other side, to really, I would even use the word admit, because there has been some shame for me around even admitting to myself and then to others, like, I want to be taken care of.
Yes.
I don't want to figure it out. I can figure it out, very competent, but even that, why do I need to even justify that I can figure it out? What if I just want to allow myself to accept what I really desire, rather than trying to egoically like justify my competence?
Yeah, it's a trip. This journey is a real trip. It's when I met my husband, this is now like 4 or 5 years ago. It was after that journey, and he, like, I registered in his eyes, it was in a moment, that if we were to be together, there was going to be a journey that we would go on that would be the journey of a lifetime. Like it was this one moment at a coffee, even though my mind was, my ego was like, well, he's not exactly the type of guy you usually go, there was all this, but I had this sense of like, no, this is a journey that I'm meant to go on. When I met him, he's a chef, and so he's a pretty masculine dude, like they have to get in that kitchen and like really make stuff happen. And but I could sense in him like the king, there was a king in him that he was not in touch with anymore. Like he'd lost touch with it. And at the time he wasn't financially was not doing very well. He wasn't making a lot of money. He had taken sort of a pay cut to come back to Houston and work, which is where we live. But I had this desire at that point. I had really really opened my heart, and my was really working more from my feminine. And I had this desire to be provided for, but like logically, it wasn't like, it didn't make sense because, from a financial standpoint, he didn't have a lot to offer at that time. And at the beginning of our relationship, I sort of handled things like I always did, financially in some ways, but in other ways, I opened myself to receive what he could provide. And there was a point I remember, and there was a point where I did express my desire, to like, this is what I really want. This is what I really want. I let him know at the time, our relationship is not on the line. This is not a conversation about, if you don't do this, I'm out. That's not the kind of conversation this is, but I have this deep desire for this provision. I am on some level, I'm tired, of needing to always financially do what I'm doing. And so I had that conversation one time with him, just expressed my desire. And then over the next year, things kept going kind of the same way, and again, I really kept my ego mind at bay and thought, no, I'm going to really trust in the expression of my desire, and we were getting ready to move at this point. Now we were married, and we were getting ready to move. And he pulled me aside one day and said, okay, when we move to the new house, I'm handling everything financially. Like all the household stuff I don't want you to handle it anymore. Now, here's the funny thing, Lindsay, is on paper, this shouldn't have worked. Because at that point, we'd started a business that we co-own. He does all of the hard stuff. He runs it day to day, but we co-own it. And then I was still doing my coaching business like I do now. And like, I knew the numbers of the business, and I knew like this, like, how is this going to work? However, I was thinking about like really feeling into my desire. No, this is what I said I wanted. I don't need to say, are you sure? Because if I look at the spreadsheet, it doesn't work. Like I can do all that. I'm a really smart gal. But I thought, no, I'm gonna experience this. I want to experience this. And it's really been interesting. So that's been several years ago now. And there was one time where something, financially didn't work quite right. And he had to come to me and say, like, I need can you help out with this? And it was a little bit of a, that was kind of a trip, because my ego really loved then the part of being provided for, right? So then I got to get unattached from that ego wise, and then just go back into experiencing that provision. And that's been that piece has been such a journey. There have been times, and I think this part is important to say, this makes me emotional. There are times when I thought, I don't know how he's doing this. And it was really tempting as a business person, as a smart business person, to dive in and go like, how are you doing this? Like, do you need my, do you need my help? But my feminine sensibility was like, he's got this. And he even said to me one time, I said, like, I don't know how you do it sometimes. And he said, honestly, I don't either, but I know my intention is to do it. And so we went through, I always think that piece of our story is so important, because I think so many times, like I've had people say to me, my women friends said, well, of course it's easy for you. You have a husband who takes care of you. And I didn't marry someone who was independently wealthy, or even like he really had to erect himself to do this. You know what I mean? And I say this out of such deep respect and reverence for him and what he's done and what he provides for our family. And I think it's amazing when women do attract in the wealthy, do like more power to you. Somehow I wasn't coded that way. Like I was meant to learn something different about masculine provision in this lifetime, you know? So yeah, that's, I think just, I'd like to share that story because I think it can give women a different angle on this conversation, you know.
That's so beautiful. And that, like, I'm hearing in your journey, Kimberly, the way that your evolution and your opening of your feminine heart and the connection to your desire and the sinking into that, and simultaneously the growth of this relationship with your husband, that journey, it like allowed him to elevate himself, and you use the word erect, to like erect in himself this king that had previously been dormant, and for you to really find your way into the equivalent, you know, the queen inside of you, who is there as counsel and support and a gracious, devoted, receptive, you know, partner to this king. And it's not that you don't have a voice, like when he comes to you and says, what do you think of this? But it's from a place of truly believing in him and
Yes.
having the faith and the willingness to say, I'm not just going to step in and fix this for him. When I see him struggling, I'm going to lean more into my feminine and lean more into my faith and trust him to rise up and to take care of what he needs to. And that is such a gift, both for yourself and for him, that you created that dynamic that wasn't like inherently coded in you.
Yeah, to me, it's sort of like it's the work of a lifetime. You know, I look back and I kind of don't, in some ways, don't even recognize who I was, and not that it was bad at all, but I don't recognize that person anymore. And even now, like, so we do co-own an ice cream business. That's why I have ice cream containers.
Oh, I didn't notice those. Oh,
And
fun.
and it's, yeah, he's a 40-year chef and was in the savory world for many, many years, quite accomplished. And then during the pandemic, we just decided to do something very different. And even today, as our company is really growing and it's amazing, and business wise, I am wired to lead. Like, it's like, if I look at my human design, you can just see it right on my chart, like you can see it. And so it's this beautiful still exploration, you know, because sometimes it's very tempting to jump in and try to take the wheel in some way. Like, still have that temptation. I don't do all this perfectly. But then when I really think about the higher vision for our relationship and who we are as a couple, and even the work that he and I want to do together someday, it's like, okay, it's not worth putting that on the line. And again, sometimes I slip up. Sometimes I just, you know, I try to take control, but I really, again, when I stay in that respect for him and that reverence for who he's become through this journey, I'm more likely to stay in my own lane, you know. And because I really do see, you described it beautifully, but like when I am in, you know, more sort of heavily weighted in my feminine presence, there's something that happens in him that you can't, it's not a doing, this piece that happens between us. Like, I just see him rise. You know, I can feel it. Yeah, it's palpable. But it's been an incredible journey, and continues to be, because we're running a business together.
As you were speaking, Kimberly, I was getting kind of an image of these weights, like counterbalancing weights. And it's like many people are trying to have relationships like this, like 50-50, you're here, I'm here, we're equal, but there's no movement here. Like there's no flow of energy here. It's just two independent functioning equal forces. And even as you said, like sinking into your feminine, I saw you kind of shimmy in your seat, and like it is kind of like a going down into the body, into the felt sense, into this receiving, grounded, like earthly energy. And the more that we allow ourselves to go down into our feminine, like that creates the polarity that then inspires. It's almost just like it's like a magnetic pulling towards that allows and inspires the masculine to rise up. And
Yeah.
that's why I think there's so much power in working with women and teaching women and inspiring this in women, because so many women, oh, it was so funny, Kimberly. I was on a call with another woman who does more tantric work one time, and she was talking about being on dating apps and how she's so frustrated. She's like, I'm always trying to make them a first move, and like I always want the man to start to lead. Like, why won't he lead me more? Like, why won't he take care of me more? And I'm just like, oh babe, like I've been there, because that is kind of going into the masculine energy. And then it's like, why won't he step up? You need to step up. Like, come on, step it on up. And
Yeah.
that's like becoming more masculine to make your man more masculine.
Right.
And well, I think there's a place for that, like in the hierarchy of men, for men kind of jostling and competing and, pushing one another to greater heights.
Yeah.
Like without the presence of a woman, or if not a woman, without the presence of that feminine energy that's kind of pulling like a gravity. Like think of the ocean and the flow of the ocean, and how much more powerful that ebb and flow of the water is than like something that you're just kind of pumping at and trying to create.
Right. Yeah. And I have to say too, like my husband and I actually did meet on online dating, and that was, again, it was a divinely guided piece. Like I had just I just gone to drinks with a friend of mine, and we're literally got in the pulpit to talk about how I'm not doing online dating and blah, blah, like just gave a whole sermon on it. And then of course, the next day it was a divine guidance of this is what needs to happen. And I was like, you got to be kidding. I just gave the sermon about I'm not doing this. And so my entire online dating profile was this, because I will obey. When I hear, I will obey. But here's how I did it. Here was my entire profile. I'm a lover of life and I find people fascinating. Period. And I put up a few pictures. They were kind of cute, but not my best ones. And that's how I ended up meeting Steve, my now husband. Like somehow that was enough. I don't know. He reached out, and I thought, oh boy, here we go. Right. It's going to be, I was very, still had that bit of disrespect in my mind at that time. He's going to love campfires and walking on the beach hand in hand, it's going to have the fish picture. Well, I looked at his profile, and it was so deep. Like he was this beautiful writer, kind of poetic, not any of the normal stuff. Seemed very earnest, and it really, again, it's that divine, it's that provision. I was given exactly what I needed in that moment to crack my heart open a little wider, to like disprove what was going on in my head. And online dating can be a bit of a trip for a feminine woman. Like there's, like, I don't know.
Well, because I think it very easily puts us into a masculine frame of like judging and analyzing. But what I love about your story, Kimberly, is like to be able to be in our feminine is to be able to kind of surrender to the divine guidance. And so I love that the day before you were like, I'm not doing online dating. And that's how I've often felt. I'm like, as the more I'm in my feminine, like, like I want nothing to do with that. And yet sometimes that spark of inspiration, that kind of divine guidance will lead you in a different way. And that willingness to receive and obey and humble ourselves to be like, who am I to say like, this is it, you know, like, this is how it is.
Yeah, I try these days not to say anything definitive like that anymore, because truly I think I get proven wrong so many times. I still slip up and do it, but yeah, there's there's this there's so much something so much bigger than us running the show. You know, truly. And that was, yeah, that was a real, and it was interesting on my husband's side. This is just a little interesting tidbit. On his side, he'd actually been doing online dating for quite some time and didn't have great experiences. You know, like he had a few little relationships that were kind of short term, but he didn't have, and his subscription to the site had run out. And the evening that he ended up connecting with me, he'd gotten an email from whatever the site was that said, "Oh, come back one more month free." And he's like, "Oh, I'm done with this." But then he kind of had this pull of like, "No, there's something about this." And then that was when we actually connected, which is so funny, right? That there are all these little forces behind life guiding us.
And that also, even though your man is a very masculine man, there's also that divine feminine in him, and that receptivity to kind of hear the call and then take action on it.
Yes. Yes. And what's so fascinating, there's so many interesting tidbits in our story, but when we eventually went to dinner after, a week or two, he didn't really, like, he's not someone who had been studying masculine and feminine energy at all. Like, that wasn't in his world. He hadn't really heard of that before. But he did, interestingly, a night or two before we actually went to dinner, he stumbled across something from Brene Brown, who he'd never heard of before. Like, he wasn't really big in personal development. I mean, he was back in the 90s, but not recently. And he watched something of hers, and I can't even tell you what it was. I'm not sure that he could tell you what it was. But when we sat down at dinner, and I knew I wanted a masculine man. Like, I wanted to be led. I was really sure about that. We sat down and we hadn't talked about that. And he said, "This may be a deal breaker, but I have to just get this on the table first." And I said, "Okay." He said, "I'm a man and I want to lead in this relationship." And I was like, literally, I'm looking around the restaurant. Did one of my friends set him up? Like, am I being set up here? Because I thought, what a funny thing to say. And what a thing, like, the thing that I wanted to hear from my heart is what he said. And he said, I've asked him about it again, even recently. And he's like, "I don't know exactly why I said this. I just knew to say it. Like, I knew he knew it's what he really wanted as well." It's very fascinating. And so I do feel like, I think some of the people that get put into our lives, and I'm sure, Lindsay, you felt this too, like, they get put in for particular journeys, for particular things that need to be opened in us. And again, it's not that we do it all perfectly. He and I don't, but we know what journey we're on. You know what I mean?
I love, Kimberly, hearing about, like, something that's so beautiful about your story is the evolution, because where you started and where you are now is so different, and where you will be in 5 years, in 10 years, will be very different. And so while some people are, encoded or kind of born into knowing, oh, I'm a feminine woman and I desire to be cared for, and I'm in a culture and a society and a family unit that teaches me that. Like, I spoke to a woman yesterday who had that, and I was like, oh my God, how beautiful. But your journey is a different one, and so is mine. And the evolution of you and your husband, and even the fact that he said that, and that he prefaced it with like, I can't believe, I'm a little nervous to say this. It's like almost like the revealing, the discovery of himself, and the kind of coming into and owning, like, this is how I want to be a man. This is how I want to be with my future wife. And for him at that time, that was an edge to say that to you. And you were in the process of fully allowing yourself to receive and to acknowledge, like, this is what I truly want. And so you were like mirrors to one another that kind of continue to help one another evolve.
Yeah, it does really, you described that beautifully, and that's how it feels, like that we were made for each other in that way, to remind each other, of who we really are and who we're here to be, and the direction in which we're meant to evolve.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's been an incredible journey. It's just been an incredible journey. And then very interestingly too, like, it's when we met, I was just coming out of a period. I mentioned the kind of tumultuous relationship, but the other thing I'd been in, my son had some health issues back when he was 11, 12, 13 years old, that which was, he's coming into his young manhood at that time. And for the better part of 2.5 years, my role for him was taking pretty intense care of him. We had to learn how to walk again. He's fine now, but like there was all this. And so like it was this period where I had to be the everything, and really even take care of my young man more than I ever would have had to, normally. And so it's this, like, this juxtaposition of those two things. Like, I was coming in really strong. And I think for me and my ego's journey, my soul's journey, like, it needed to be that much contrast for me to really get it.
mm, yes, sometimes we need that. It's what is necessary for us to evolve.
Yes. Yes. I tend to need the sledgehammer. That's I mean, I would like to think as I age, maybe that will get less. But I don't know yet.
Next time, could you maybe just make it a little softer? Not quite that
right.
like, I swear I'll listen better. Yeah. Oh, so Kimberly, I'm loving all of this. I would love to hear a little bit more, around this topic of men and money. And we've touched on this some, and really all of this in some way is related to it. But talk to me a little bit more about the kind of financial piece. Like, what does that look like in terms of how you and your husband balance this?
Mm-hmm.
Where now, how is all of that working?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's fascinating, because I came out of, I was a 50-50 gal, or maybe even, maybe more even at times. If I wanted more, I'd go make more. That was sort of my orientation back then. But with my husband and I, when we moved, with that little story I was telling you, like, he really meant that any of the things day to day, like our home, our whatever it takes to keep the home going. He's a chef, so even our food on a daily basis, like he wants to handle everything, and so much so, like, he does handle it. He doesn't want to, he does it, and so what I typically handle are things like, he'll say, oh, wouldn't it be fun to have a vacation or whatever. Like, sometimes I'll handle that, but even this last year he handled all that too. So he really keeps expanding himself and his own resources to to be able to do more and more. And so it's like, in a lot of ways, I'm still learning to trust. And I don't mean trust him. I mean, really trust life, trust the divine in this situation. Like I will, and it's not that I'm going around not trusting everything, but I notice sometimes I think, okay, when is it, who's gonna wake me up and go like, no. But he finds such pleasure in providing for us, for my son, for me, for the household. And he loves it. He loves providing for me. And really, to me, my job, this is going to sound really simplistic and may trigger somebody, but like I feel like my job is to really be delighted by all of it and just take it in and be just so nourished and happy, and then that really does something for him, of course. But he goes like he does more and more. And so I say that not to brag, but just to say, like, if it's possible for me, it's possible for pretty much anyone. Yeah, there are all kinds of, like, fun things that he arranges for us. And I think the key to that, though, because it hasn't always been that way, I will say this piece, I think this is a really key part, is back when he didn't have as many resources, and what I think as a woman, it would have been tempting for me, as I'd done in the past, to provide the things that I wanted. I want this. I want to go to that concert and spend hundreds of dollars on tickets, for example. I'll just go do it, or I'll buy it for us, or I'll go with one of my friends. That would have been my old way to do it. And I was really, so again, this is somehow that I was guided during that time with him, was to not do that, to really take in and receive what he was providing, whatever it was, and really take pleasure and, really be happy with that. That was one of the practices that I did when it was smaller, when I wasn't getting so much of what I wanted, and that did something as well. I sense that that's some sort of magnification code. I don't know that for sure, but I think there's something in that. Not that you would do that to get more. I'm not saying that, but I think there's something in that of just, being so satisfied and so taken care of when things were tight and were, that it's really, like I often say now, like, I ask for nothing, he gives me the world. Like it really, that's my experience.
Oh, so beautiful.
But it's that key of being able to just, how satisfied can I be? How much can I generate that for myself when he does things for me? How much happiness can I squeeze out of this? How much enjoyment can I squeeze out of this? You know? Yeah.
I love that. And something that I'm reflecting on as you're speaking is that it's not passive, because sometimes women might think like, oh, I had a conversation with a man recently who was not really in his divine masculine. And I was talking about having men in my life who take me out for food. And he was like, oh, so you're a mooch. And I was like, wow, this man does not understand what's happening here. Because when I allow a man to pay for my dinner, oh my God, the pleasure and satisfaction he receives of how beautifully I receive and appreciate and enjoy what he has given me. Like, oh my God, that is worth so much more than me throwing down $30. So much more. And men reflect this back to me all the time. It is a pleasure to feed you. I want to feed you. How good it feels to feed you. And it was so clarifying for me, Kimberly, because I recognize that part of my consciousness that's like, you're a mooch. you're just a leech. You're a leech to this man. You're leeching his energy. You're leeching his money. You're taking advantage of him. And there is truth to that, that is a distortion that exists in many women. And I think that men can also feel that energetically. It's not
Yes.
necessarily about who's paying how much. It's not about, oh, I paid 20 and you paid 0 versus you paid 10, I paid 10. It's about what is the flow of the energy. And if I, as a woman, am not able to, because I'm stuck in my own pain or my own unworthiness or my own disappointment with men. And so, okay, you give me this, oh, it's not good enough. You give me this, okay, whatever, no big deal. Like, or just criticizing it, like that's going to feel horrible to him. But to really reorient myself towards, it's not my responsibility to provide. It's my responsibility to receive and appreciate
Yes.
given, and to humble myself enough to say, this is not about your egoic preference, like
Yes.
way. This is about being able to receive him as a man and making that the priority.
Yes. Yes. And our appreciation magnifies, right? Like this is the piece. I never got this before. Somehow when I was, when I was growing up and in my young womanhood, like I didn't get that piece of appreciation. I almost got like, oh, if I appreciate, I'm sort of showing my cards or something. There was something bad that could happen if I appreciate. He won't try as hard or something. And it's like, oh my gosh, I couldn't have been more wrong. Like our appreciation just sort of magnifies. It literally appreciates what is being given. And it does so much for my husband. And even, my son, he's now 18. Like it's amazing when I appreciate like what that does for them.
Yeah. And coming back to something we discussed earlier, like underneath all of this, it's like the facade is that this is about you and your husband, you and your son, right? On a deeper level, it's about you and God, and you and yourself as God. And this reflection of like, on a deeper level, am I really able to open myself to that divine provision? Or am I stuck in this fear-based mentality? Because what I've observed in myself and in others is that when we as women are not able to appreciate what is being given to us, it comes from a place of pain.
Yes.
And some people look at these women and say, oh, you're so entitled. She's so entitled. And I know, because I've lived that entitlement comes from a place of not truly feeling worthy of
Yes.
receiving that which I desire.
That's beautiful. It's so beautiful. Yeah, we do this. It seems like it's about the relationship or it's about him, and it's not. This is so much. I mean, that my relationship benefits greatly from this orientation, my relationship with my son, with my husband. But this is so much about me being able to live fully, right? In my pleasure and my desire and my just, yeah, enjoyment and savoring of life. Like that's really what this is about, that I don't spend the time in those fear-based scenarios or lack scenarios, or I'm feeling unworthy. Like it's so much about this orientation is, while it's not perfect, it doesn't make a perfect life. It makes a much more enjoyable life.
So beautiful. Wow. I'm so grateful to have had this time with you.
I have enjoyed this so much. I'm so glad we connected. I can really feel your heart in your work.
Thank you. With you as well. Yeah. It's so beautiful too. I resonate so much with your journey, Kimberly. And I mean, I'm on a different place in that journey. I'm not married right now. But to be on this path of really discovering who we are, like, yes, it's about the feminine, at least in this aspect, but it really is a spiritual journey, like a soul journey. And I think that when I think of where I was 5 years ago, thinking about like these more traditional gender roles, or there's so much conversation in the world around gender and what it means to be a man or a woman or something in between or something else. And what I'm realizing now is this has nothing to do, like, it may appear that I'm becoming, the woman I was supposed to be as a 60s housewife, but it has nothing to do with that. It's really about healing my own heart and coming into what feels like the fullest and deepest and most loved expression of who I can be. Mm. And that naturally has led me towards connecting with this feminine essence that was so deeply guarded and scared.
That's beautiful. It's so beautiful. What a gorgeous journey.
Thank you. And I see that reflected in you and in what you've shared.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And how amazing that you said, I don't know, you're in your 50s now, right? Somewhere in your 50s. And like, how amazing, right? Like, I'm 31, almost 32, and then there may be women who are going through this when they're 15 or 75, and like, it's never too late.
Never too late.
It's never too late.
It's never too late. Absolutely. Oh, good.
Amazing.